Wasn't that the idea?
Yeah, but I mean, probably should still be putting something into it. Is the point? I haven't put anything into it in years, and I probably should be putting something into
Oh, okay.
What do you own about? You want to put yours on and put it on?
No.
I think that. Fast lane, don't be slow. 'Cause I'm giving you the green light, go. If you got something you want to show it to me. Show it to me. Show it to me. Show it to me. That's way too high pitching for me to listen
I'm not really listening to music right now.
inside. The aim of the game is a world government comprising members of the cabal who are elected by no one and accountable to no one. And according to Mr. Rockefeller, the plan is well advanced. Does this help you to understand why our civil rights are being taken away from us? I say us, because Canada too was included in the grand plan. So here we are more than a decade later fighting another war that can't be won. There's no country on earth powerful enough to protect its citizens against fanatical hate, as we learned from the Boston Marathon. The mere attempt to pursue the impossible pits neighbor against neighbor and the state power structure against everyone. All of the freedoms won by the millions of men and women who fought and died in World War II are being flushed unceremoniously down the drain. The only hope of peace is a negotiated settlement. This will require a paradigm shift in American attitudes. It involves a de facto renunciation of the plan for a new American energy, the adoption of a pledge of cooperation with all humankind to build the kind of world which we are collectively capable of. Young people everywhere need to be challenged by a noble cause. They need to be involved in arresting global warming, creating a banking system that is just and sustainable.
We don't need a bank.
In the transformation to the new reality.
You know what? We need
we
bigger guns.
In harmony with our celestial neighbors, as well as seeking peace on earth. In a word, we have to become spiritual beings and practice the one tenet that the world's major religions have in common. That is the Golden Rule.
Yep, I already don't like that guy.
Really? I like him.
All those things are lies.
I like his soothing voice.
Served in the United States.
Oh, I definitely don't like this guy.
During my tenure, I was on many occasions asked to serve as the official, unofficial UFO consultant dealing with UFO matters in the areas of my assignment. As a result of my involvement, I was able to ascertain that the United States government knew a whole lot more about UFOs than it was telling the American public. That there was an intelligence involved, that there was a highly evolved technology. I learned that to a degree, we were carrying on a dialogue with this intelligence. We were making every effort we could to acquire this technology and make it part of our own existing technology. We did this, I was told, in the interest of national security. We also had an officially sanctioned deception program. This was in total disregard as to the impact this would have on the individual witnesses and also on their families. This ultimately led to my disillusionment with the program and my involvement in it. I sincerely feel that no government has the right to destroy the lives of the people which it is supposed to serve. While I was in the military, and I got to the point where I was no longer interested in trying to be part of the program and actually was going against the program, and I started to be very open and talking about what was going on. This resulted in every effort being made to try to destroy my military career. I was threatened, and they even tried to force my military retirement, or I could face possible court-martial. These actions failed, of course, as you know. At one point, I even had an individual come up to me, point a gun at my head, and inform me we could have a training accident, and this would end this foolishness once and for all. I firmly believe that those of us that served in a capacity of the U.S. government in some form or fashion, and who were exposed to the truth, we have a moral obligation to the UFO witnesses, the real victims of the UFO phenomena, to expose once and for all this policy and to reveal the truth, and that is, we are not alone in the universe.
Robert Dean has a list of credentials a mile long. He served 4 years from 1963 to 1967 at Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers, Europe, the military arm of NATO. He was an intelligence analyst with a cosmic top-secret clearance.
Well, Don, it began for me in 1963 when I was assigned to the Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers in Europe. I arrived in the summer of '63 and I was assigned to the Operations Division. I was further assigned to what we call War Room, the Supreme Headquarters Operations Center. And at that time I was given a cosmic top secret clearance, which was and still is the highest level of security access that NATO has. When I was assigned to the War Room, I learned that a study had been initiated in 1961, and everybody was talking about it. They were gossiping about it. And the subject was UFOs, and that intrigued me a bit. When that study was concluded in 1964 and it was published, and I was still working in the War Room at that time, I had access to this document. I had a chance to read it. And having been exposed to it, I must tell you honestly that my life had quite been the same. Because I read first-hand reports, verifiable NATO military material that indicated that the UFOs were not only real, but they represented something far beyond anything I had ever imagined before. When the study was concluded, they concluded that there were 4 different groups apparently coming and visiting us. Out of those 4 different groups, one group looked exactly like we do, so much so that they could sit beside you in a restaurant or in an airplane or in a theater, and you'd never know. And that particular point bothered the military guys a lot. Point being that some of these people from somewhere could be walking up and down the corridors of state headquarters, or they could be walking up and down the corridors of the Pentagon. One day at lunch, a lieutenant colonel made the remark, he says, Jesus, do you realize they could even be in the White House? And there was a little forced laughter at that point, I remember, because a lot of us over the years have had some misgivings about the occupants of the White House. But the point I'm making is that the idea that aliens could be here in our midst bothered the military, because if you're not paranoid when you go into the service, you're certainly trained very quickly to be so. It's the nature of the military mind, I think, to be paranoid. But that was only part of the story. The shape conclusions in '64 were that there were 4 groups that we knew of. They were apparently interplanetary. Some very likely were interstellar. They even concluded that some of them could be intergalactic. When I retired in 1970, many of our military people knew at that point that we were not simply dealing with visitations from people from other planets or star systems. They had concluded by '76 that some of these visitors very well might be multidimensional in their source. The evidence that we had collected and the evidence that they had repeatedly demonstrated to us, and that's no accident. It became very clear after a time that there was a program or a process of some kind underway, that they had demonstrated over and over and over again that they apparently were able to manipulate matter and time. Now this really shook up our scientists. There are a lot of new young scientists in particle physics today who talk about multiple dimensions. There's a brilliant young professor in New York by the name of Michio Kaku, who's written a brilliant book called Hyperspace, where they talk about 10 separate dimensions.
In 2008 in LA, Steve Quayle was on the program, as he's been so often, and he brought us that pilot anonymously. The pilot did not want his name disclosed, and he talked about this very bizarre story of how he blew this dead giant out to some base in Ohio. Describe exactly what you saw.
Well, when we came up, basically came outside, we had a normal 463L pilot loaded down with what they told us was a giant.
He talked about this giant being 1,100 pounds, anywhere from 10 to 15 feet long, and it was killed. It was apparently shot somewhere in a cave in Afghanistan, but before it was shot, it lunged at several of our troops, our soldiers. It may have even gorged somebody. It was just a bizarre story.
Well, I'll get to that. The bottom line was there was a patrol that was dispatched in a very rugged, remote area in Afghanistan, 2002, looking for high-value targets. So the patrol is dropped off by helicopter. They do their thing. They're supposed to check in. They don't check in. Second check-in time comes in. It doesn't happen. Third one.
They call them rally points.
Rally points. And look at the rally point. So everybody's going, were they all killed? Was it
Volcano Forest Inn.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
Hey, I was just thinking about my balls in your vagina.
Oh, and
And what kind of combination they could make.
oh, so you're saying you want to make a baby, huh? You want to have a daughter? Don't you think we should get married before you make a daughter?
No, I just want to practice.
You just want to practice, huh? Oh.
Oh, my goodness. You're better mine. What time?
I'm kind of preoccupied away from the bedtime right now.
Well, you can call me later then.
Oh, but I don't have your number. You have to text me your number.
I just called you from my number.
I know, but my phone only says Volcano Forest Inn, so I can't see your number. My phone tells me if someone's calling the inn or if they're calling me personally, and you called the inn, so it just says that you called the inn.
Yeah, see, so you gave me your card?
Yes.
So it hasn't printed that I can get a hold of you at, but that's kind of lame.
Hey, you know what? Tell me what your telephone... Yes, hang on a second. Zach will write down your number. Zach, can you write down a number real quick, please?
Fuck, really?
Yes, please.
Son of a bitch, make me open up this damn